What's going on, guys? It's been a while since we've done this video, but listen, one of the reasons why Marvel Rivals works so well is that the skill gap between all the heroes in the game is comically large. Everybody has a hero for them, but then everybody also has a hero not for them. That, you know, the one. You pick them and you're probably going to ruin your team's night if you don't practice. And some heroes, they carry you. You click a button, congrats, you got MVP. At least if you lose, it's not your fault. You got the SVP, but others expect you to carry them. Some heroes, if you blink wrong, you're going to get punished for it. So I want you to come with me. We're going to go back to the Hellfire Gala back room here, secret access. And we've got this giant chart of skill floor and skill ceiling. We're going to rank every single character in the game from easiest to hardest to play, looking at a bunch of metrics, and let's break it down. So if you're savvy with charts, which I know you are, we got green is good. Green is easy. If it goes up to red, red is bad. But breaking it down further, we have this graph with two different bars. The bottom bar there going from green for easy and red to hard is going to represent our skill floor of a hero. Essentially, the minimum skill required to play decently for a newer player of said hero. Is this hero easy to play for the first time and be effective? Would I recommend this hero to a brand new player? Might this hero perform well in low elo? And how fast can you learn the hero to help your team succeed is a lot of the metrics we're looking at. In short, how easy is the hero to pick up and do pretty good? But our bar over on the left-hand side, the vertical one, is our skill ceiling. Now, our skill ceiling is the limit or lack thereof on how good can you get at a given hero with enough practice. With all the time in the world, how much is there to learn and master with said hero, and how hard is it to play with them at the maximum capacity? How difficult is it to maximize this hero's potential at the highest level, and might this hero have significant performance difference dependent on the elo, aka the skill of the player? Again, in a nutshell, high skill ceiling means that exceptional skill players can continue to get better and better and more value as they improve. So, like, how hard's the hero? All right, guys, first up is Adam Warlock, one of the high supports we're going to talk about today, the glass cannon, who's going to reward cracked aim but bad positioning because he has no escape. A lot of this comes down to one thing, and that's how good can you aim? Can you hit everything? If you're a god, great. If not, enjoy spectator mode. Now, his skill ceiling was raised even more after they implemented the last patch where if you get headshots, you reduce his cooldowns, which are so important on this character. Mastering the perfect time to use his heals and his soul bond is one of the most important parts about him and what makes him so hard to learn in the first place, giving him a hard skill floor and one of the hardest out of all of our supports today. Finally, to wrap him up, guys, his ultimate's not the easiest thing to master, so he's one of our hardest heroes in both categories today. King of Wakanda, Black Panther, is going to go down a little bit where he was last time we did this video. I had him in the top right, but time has proven his kit is pretty easy to learn as far as his floor goes, but the ceiling is infinitely high with this guy. There's videos on Twitter about supports complaining what can they even do about a skilled enough Black Panther. He's one of those heroes that quite literally can carry if you can pull off the combo and you know the exact timing, when to go in, when to go out, where are the health packs, and most importantly, how fast can you do it all? Securing Black Panther as one of the hardest heroes to master. Next up, we got Black Widow, and this one's always my favorite. If somebody doesn't get their main, they go to Black Widow as almost a threat that they're going to throw the game because, well, she's considered that in the majority of rival ranks. Widow by no means is an easy character to master. She both has a high skill floor and ceiling because her kit is a little wonky in what is a third-person hero shooter. Having the ability to zoom in and use first person can be great given if you have god aim, giving her a high skill ceiling, but at the same time, if you get dove, you're going to need to perfect her kick combo and one-shot abilities to keep dives off your back, neither of which are easy and always provide you in a high stress and high aim environment, making Black Widow one of the hardest characters to use both as a floor and a ceiling. In short, guys, if you're good at Natasha, you've got my respect. Which is funny because that takes us to who I think is quite possibly the hardest character to both use and master. A lot of people have looked at this graph. I've gotten multiple opinions and almost all of them have agreed that Bruce Banner is one of, if not the hardest character in Rivals to perfect and master. The guy almost has an infinite skill ceiling when it goes to going in, getting out, and it makes it evident in matches if you've played a good Hulk. Now, the Hulk isn't always in the meta, but what he can provide to teams and mastering what he gives you as a hero is absolutely crazy. It's Hulk smash or Hulk feeds. There's no in between. Great players make him the green, terrifying monster that he is, and bad ones, you know, it's just free ult charge for the team. Captain America, the great patriotic distraction. Now, the King of Survivability you would think is easy to use up front, but honestly, he's actually a bit harder than you might think. Yes, his kit gives you the ability to survive, but oftentimes, if you're not good, you're not going to live through it. Being the brawler that he is and being right up close in people's face, it takes a lot to really nail down his combos to do efficient damage and distraction. Not only that, but you need to know who to go to and when to peel for your team, when to put up the shield and reflect an ultimate back, or be that distraction to get your team the point. All of this tied together in a bow gives both a high skill floor and ceiling, and even if you master that, you can learn things like animation canceling with his sprint on and off to do increased damage, which if you don't know is a hard animation cancel because you have to constantly do it and perfect it. Quite honestly, I think they perfected Steve Rogers within Rivals, and there's not a lot of goated Captain Americas at the top of rank. In the same vein, he's not the easiest to use at low rank, and so we've got him in a nice little cozy spot here, leaning towards the top of both. Cloak and Dagger, infamously known as one of the easiest heroes to play because both heroes have auto aim to both heal and deal damage. They have pretty straightforward abilities and an ultimate to boot. This is oftentimes the support that I tell people to play. If they're bad at aiming, if they haven't played a hero shooter, if they're new to the game, it's just a very rewarding hero to play and give something to your team. There are things that she can master and you have to learn 2 heroes at once. But given the insane healing that Dagger can do and carry potential, I'm going to give her somewhat of a skill ceiling that you can master, but overall, definitely one of the easier heroes to play. Which takes us to Doctor Strange. He's kind of the center point of this entire graph because they definitely changed his damage output and have given him more survivability. He does appear simple, but he does have high level play that requires shield mastery, ult timing, team synergy that oftentimes reflects a chess match within Rivals. Now, he is somewhat easy to pick up and you can definitely produce for your team, but I think he is the perfect hero. You can play him at a good efficiency at a lower floor, but in the same vein, you can also do some pretty crazy things the better you get at him. Moving right along, guys, we have the newest hero, Emma Frost, and I talked to a lot of pros about her because personally I thought she was pretty easy to pick up and play, but she is very aim intensive. Getting that beam up to 100, keeping on target, and melting crystals takes a lot to really perfect and get good use out of her. But on the other side, she is extremely good in crazy DPS when it comes to her diamond form. Very easy to go in, choke slam, kick against a wall, and get a KO, which makes her a bit easier to learn and more friendly in her diamond form. However, great Emma players are going to learn how to really use her outside of diamond form, and there is a lot to learn about her. I do think she could probably go a bit higher than I have her, but given her being a bit newer, this is about where I've got her for now. Okay, guys, Groot is known as one of the best vanguards right now, but where does he land on the graph? I've got him towards the very top of skill ceiling, one of the most rewarding tanks to learn within the game's highest carry potential, and you can do insane things with his walls. But I do think he's somewhat easy to learn, a little bit past the kind of medium point, trending towards hard. After all, putting walls down in the way and getting efficient use of those walls gets harder and harder, which is why he can infinitely scale on this graph. As you continue to learn him, you can pull off some crazy tech with him, going from insane damage numbers to blocking key ultimates, but then you get to the point of blocking strategies and strategists healing their vanguards. And that's just a couple of the many uses that you can pull off, not to mention an ultimate that can wipe the team and get your point, the objective. The guy's got so much going for him that I think he's definitely one of the hardest vanguards to learn, but even if he's not the hardest, he is probably the most rewarding. All right, guys, next up we have Hawkeye, who puts out tremendous damage even if you don't mean to. A broken clock is right a couple times a day, as they say, and that's probably why you see a big difference between someone like him and Black Widow where they're placed. Yes, you have to be pretty good at aiming, but you're going to put out devastating damage, and you have quite a complementary kit to deal with people up close. Now, there are a couple things to learn with his, melee and his ultimate, but for the most part, pretty easy hero. If you want to fully master him, you go right into aim labs, also arrow switching and getting the most out of those explosive arrows, crazy jumps into snipes and reflect backs. There's a lot of wild stuff you can pull off with Hawkeye. Next up, guys, we go to Hela, who has somewhat of a simplistic kit, but ultimate responsibility for what you can do for your team. Her DPS is crazy, and you can pump out some respectable numbers if you know how to aim even in the slightest. But if you don't, it's okay. Get a good vantage point on your opponent, and you can pump out some good numbers either way. Now, she's combined with a great stun and the Raven to get her into advantageous positioning, which definitely makes her skill ceiling somewhat high, but her ultimate is by far one of the most easy brain dead, rain down from above AC 130 things to use within Rivals. because of the responsibility on the Goddess of Death and what we have seen the pros do and quite frankly carry in the biggest grand final tournaments that we've had so far. Hela is often going to win for her team, giving her one of the highest skill ceilings within the game. Not to mention, guys, if you have one of the best supports in the game in Loki, or you've got a Thor in the team up and getting the full utilization of that and nailing the final hits gives you so much carry potential in game modes that very much reward revives. So Johnny Storm Human Torch was a tough one to place because I actually think that he is one of the harder heroes to learn at a consistent basis in the game. Being a flying hero is going to cause a lot of attention to come to you, but also just the way that he plays and throwing out his flame walls and dealing enough damage and knowing when to use what ability, when to crash in and get up close and personal. He's obviously doing way better in Season 2 than he was in Season 1.5, and we're starting to see some of the top players really perfect his mechanics and stand out above those that casually play the hero. You can really boil down what he does to map awareness and a little bit of aim, right? If you know how to aim, great. You can do even more with them. If not, you can rely on the other aspects of his kit. Knowing where to duck behind cover, where to get the health pack, and where to lay down those flame walls is going to reward consistent play with Human Torch, but he can be somewhat friendly to pick up. Next up, guys, we have Invisible Woman, and honestly, she's going to go pretty high when it comes to support players within the game, perfecting her shield placements, her pushes to save the team, her clutch timing on the ultimate. Every part of her is the Jill of all trades. She's got a lot going on for her, and with great power comes great responsibility. I think Invisible Woman is one of the more rewarding heroes to play, but also is not the easiest to pick up. I think people deceptively try to play her in rank and oftentimes don't really do all that great. They would be doing far more on an easier hero to pick up and play, something like Cloak and Dagger. Great damage, phenomenal healing, a kit that can kind of do it all. I think she's one of the best and hardest to learn. Iron Fist players are some of the most crazy that you see out there, perfecting his defense, making it almost impossible to deal damage on him, his mobility, his cooldowns. He's a hero that I've tried to pick up, and it took some time to learn him. I would say a good chunk of just ranked games to really learn his kits, his combos, his get in, his get out, his survivability. There's a lot going on with him, and they give you a lot to play with. But once you kind of learn it, you really get the ebbs and flow of his kit. Not to say he doesn't have a high skill ceiling. There are definitely Iron Fists that can straight up make it look like a different game than Rivals. So they do have my respect. If you're interested in playing him, he's a bit easier to play than I thought. Not easy. He's definitely more the middle of the pack. But to nail down the Dragon defense, that's really going to separate you from a decent Iron Fist to a great one. But also just, again, that positioning and knowing when to go in, go out, and not die. You should probably never die with this hero. He has so much going for him to prevent that, and the kit getting that reduced cooldown gives him all the more reason to get out alive. Next up, we talk about Iron Man, who you will have to learn how to really master his mobility in the air, but his AoE primary and the majority of his is somewhat easy to learn. I would say mastering the aiming with his beam can be pretty tough, and so that can put him up higher because of it. But overall, the skill ceiling for this character, I think, is about the midway points, maybe a little bit higher. I can say pretty confidently, though, that I've been in plenty of games where I have an Iron Man. Maybe he's a Lord and he's not doing great, but other times, man, if we didn't have him, we would probably lose the game. So the guy can carry. I think he's pretty welcoming to new players, but also does a lot once you perfect his kit. Next up, we go to what was once the most played hero in all of quick play in Rivals. That is Jeff, the baby land shark. Now, I think Jeff is actually not the easiest hero to play, and he's one of the toughest to master. A great Jeff is one of the hardest heroes to perfect within the game. Nailing his role to provide value for the team, his animation canceling, and taking him from what is supposed to be a strategist and a healer to one of the most lethal, unkillable DPS has me putting Jeff sky high on this chart. I think he's about middle of the pack to use effectively. Within lower ranks, he does have a friendly heal, and if you play him as a strategist and just being able to get somewhat consistent use of his ultimate, it's not the hardest thing to grasp, but to master him is a whole nother conversation. Now, the only strategist that gets a little bit above him is going to be Loki, who I think is probably the hardest character to truly master in this game for several reasons, and it's really the entire kit. He has abilities that give you the chance to never die within the game, but also put out respectable damage and the most healing within the roster. Combine that with perfecting clone placements, perfectly landed green circles of life via his runestones, an ultimate that can turn into quite literally any hero within the game. So learning how to do that, when to do that, and perfecting the timing and getting the most out of that takes some of the most skill. We've seen that in pro play, but also within all the given ranks of Rivals. He's one of the most rewarding heroes to play and to learn. After hundreds of hours on the character and the most played that I have within the game, I still feel like I have so much to learn. And because of all that, he's not easy to pick up and play either. I think some of his aura is going to give people the want to play him, but should they? Probably not. Luna Snow, guys, is one of those heroes that I disrespected last time we did this. I think she's deceptively one of the harder heroes to master, but she is very easy to perform with and get the basics of her kit. You aim to deal damage, you aim to shoot, you've got a nice freeze, good mobility, and her ultimate is obviously one of the best and most kind of brain dead within the game. She can be low effort with high reward, but to perfect this, and what they do give you at your disposal is infinitely high in regards of skill ceiling. She can pump out crazy good damage. She can get north of 50k healing in a lot of games, and just the overall support that she gives the team and carry potential is sky high. I think Luna is a great character to play over time because you can learn a hero that's beginner friendly, but then you can master a hero that's going to reward you for the efforts. All right, guys, Magik, the technical duelist. Play her wrong and you're gonna die. Play her right in your one-woman boss fight. I think she's actually pretty tough to learn and to just play casually. Her aim box is very unforgiving. She's very combo focused and deadly, but her whole kit is just unforgiving. You have to land your shots with Magik. You need to get in, get out. You do have decent survivability, but you're not this unkillable machine. And quite frankly, you're kind of the opposite. If you're not dealing damage, it's going to be tough for you to do consistent work on Magik. But her skill ceiling does go very high. Her demon placement, her passive health, positioning, and just the pure damage combo output of landing the melee into the hit, into the uppercut, pulling off the whirlwind dash. There's a lot going for Magik, and we've all been in the games where that one Magik carries it for you and your team. Or maybe you're that Magik. Either way, she's definitely towards the top of the skill ceiling, and she's not the easiest to pick up if you want to learn a duelist. Now, if you think that character's hard, just wait till you see this. You know what this is? This is the hardest thing to do, apparently. It's subscribing if you watch the channel. We got a lot of you guys that are watching on a daily basis, and the good news is it's very easy. It's all the way green to press the red subscribe button. Red, green. I'm confusing myself, but if you guys have it, you enjoy the content. It helps me more than you know. So, okay, back to the content. Next up, we've got Magneto, one of the hardest heroes to kill within the game, given all the survivability that he has, but one of the easiest to play and master, in my opinion. I think he has a very simplistic kit outside of landing those clutch ultimates. There's not a whole lot you need to perfect with the hero. Obviously, mashing when to shield certain DPS, or maybe a support that's getting dove. The DPS is good, and you can learn some combos there, but he's quite simple in overall design and impact. Not saying he's not one of the best heroes, definitely is going to earn that title, but when it comes to how hard he is to pick up and play, that's another conversation. And I think that's a great thing because we need heroes like this that aren't infinitely impossible to learn but can still provide mass value for your team. Next up, we go to Mantis. I talked to so many people about this hero. I've placed her all over because there's a lot of cases that you can make for the hero. Now, the way that she heals is quite simple, but she's aim reliant on most of her kits. Now that she has lower health and even more responsibility of giving damage up and heals and the cooldown management, I think she's very tough to master and has a great skill ceiling, but she's not the easiest to pick up either. Yes, you can throw out some easy healing, but for the most part, to get that reward of the headshots and feed your entire kit, it's going to take a little bit of skill to learn. And I think there's just easier supports to kind of pick up and play within the game. It definitely doesn't help that she doesn't have the strongest ultimate, and that if you miss the sleep, you're going to be in for a tough time with divers. And they just nerfed her overall HP, so she's got all that going against her. But I do think there's a good skill ceiling for mastering the character. All right, guys, next up is Mr. Fantastic, who I think is relatively easy to pick up and grasp, but there's so much going on to master with him that I actually think he's got a nice skill ceiling. His overall gameplay loop and utilizing his elasticity, knowing when to go into big form and timing that up, and then going into survival form and going into ultimate, and just being this constant middle of the pack vanguard and DPS that he truly is. It's not as simple as people might think. You can do good damage with him and you can definitely live, but to be truly effective for your team, I don't think it's quite as easy as you might think. For me personally, I know there's been some games where I feel like we've needed a Fantastic, and I typically play him at a pretty efficient level without devoting all my time on the character. But in the same vein, it feels like, man, I probably could learn a couple more things and unique techs and matchups, most importantly, with the guy. It pains me to say it because I love to play him, but I think Moon Knight is probably one of the easiest characters to both play and master. Now, there are some little things with his combos and his tech, and it all just boils down to positioning and not letting the enemy team know that you exist. His primary and main source of damage is very unforgiving for the enemy team if they're close up. His ultimate and the entire way his kit works is nothing too complex. I would want to buff him up a little bit in terms of skill ceiling because I do think that getting tricky with where you're at and constantly being within the shadows is a little bit underrated. But once you master his positioning and his onk placement, which is going to be a big part of his kit, and just putting it in places that it takes a little bit more thought for your opponents to kill, you should be good to go. All right, next up, we've got Namor. And you know what? I put Namor a little bit higher this time in terms of skill ceiling, and that comes down to how much damage you can do with his Triton. I'll say this, if you're a low elo Namor main, you're out here pretending to be, you know, tactical, but the turrets do like 90% of the work. He's pretty easy to play, but he is sneakily hard to master. Having good turret locations, precise aim with his Tritons, and perfecting those Moby Dicks for the most efficient insta-kills takes a little bit of time with Namor. But honestly, I think he's perfect for the game. If you haven't played hero shooters, he's great to pick up and play and have a good time. But if you want to master him, you can really amp up what he puts out for the team. So guys, we have Peni Parker, who's a pretty welcoming tank to play and learning the bunker playstyle, putting down the nests and the mines and punishing players that don't pay attention. But I do think great Peni players are pretty hard to find. And because of this, I'm going to put her pretty high up in terms of her skill ceiling. Perfecting every little bit of her mechanics of her web and her mobility and her mine placement and her shots. They gave her a lot more lethalness within Season 2, and we're seeing more and more perfect her as a player. But in the top 500, let's say, there's only a couple that can kind of reign and survive with the rest of them. I think Peni's a great hero to learn, have a good time, and unless you want to dedicate yourself to the craft and the school of Peni Parker, then probably pick another Vanguard. But if you enjoy her playstyle, you can be rewarded at the top high level of play. With that being said, there's definitely a middle ground if you don't want to use her all the time and be that offense Peni that people don't love on their team. You can learn her on different defensive points, like on Clintar and the Wakanda map, to give yourself a boost, maybe some domination, and that won't take all too much to master. We go to Psylocke, who is definitely one of the harder heroes to learn. To be effective, you have to nail combos, aim, and key awareness to get the most out of her. Obviously, the easiest part of her kit is going to be the ultimate, but even getting perfect use out of that is not completely simple. But this is one of those heroes that if you don't know how to do those things, you're not going to get a lot of value for your team. But if you can perfect them, you have one of the strongest carries within all of Rivals. Now, she does have some forgiveness with her primary and her shots, but it's all about positioning and putting yourself in harm's way constantly with the hero that earns her one of the harder skill ceilings. There's definitely noticeable differences between good Psylocks and great Psylocks, with some matches where I can recall playing against some Smurf accounts that were in the top 100 that our team could not get out of the spawn because she could just erase them so quickly. Pretty appropriate to her entire kit. Psylocke is deceptively strong and harder to learn. All right, guys, next up is Raccoon, who I do think is definitely one of the easiest heroes to play within the game. Definitely the easiest support to just get the job done. If you've never played a video game, you could probably do okay on Rocket. As far as his skill ceiling goes, doing good damage and learning his mobility and key timings isn't the easiest thing, and I don't want to undermine that, but in comparison to the other heroes on today's list, he's definitely amongst the easiest. And that takes us to Scarlet Witch, who last time I had as probably the easiest hero to learn, and I think I'm going to get a little bit more respect for her now. I think they've given her enough in her kit between her ultimate and how to utilize that. Yes, she does have auto aim, and that will always have her as the easiest hero to learn, but to perfect her, I'm going to give her a bit more respect because there are metrics you need to learn with her phase in, phase out, her AoE stun, in the way that she just presents and constantly threatens the battlefield. I think having a hero like Scarlet Witch be too good is a little bit dangerous because of how easy it is to get effective use out of her at times. Shout out to those that had the Lord icon on her prior to this season because you guys were in the trenches. Overall, this feels like a pretty good spot for Scarlet. The hardest hero to learn within the game and one of the hardest to perfect within Rivals is Spider-Man. It's crazy they made the most infamous Marvel character also the hardest to learn. Everything about his kit screams you need to take time to learn it. His high mobility, his combo efficiency. Spider-Man takes a lot of patience, but with that patience comes high reward. Obviously one of the best characters to master and has one of the highest skill ceilings within the entire game. There's just nothing quite like a guy that's just cracked on Peter Parker. Rolling out a spawn and getting kills in 10 seconds. I mean, I've seen some truly stupid stuff on the guy. If you play him, if you master him, you've got my respect. Hardest to play and one of the hardest to master. All right, guys, so that takes us to the lowest on the list, and we've got Squirrel Girl. Now, I hate to say it, but you click and you shoot and you've got explosives, and Squirrel, that's about what you have. You have an ultimate that does some auto aim, and you do have some stuns. But outside of Spider-Man team up, that complicates the kit a little bit. She's very straightforward and forgiving as a hero. You know, learning the cooldowns and some of the placements and aiming, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt and give her a tick up or two in the skill ceiling. But in my opinion, I think Squirrel might be the easiest hero to both play and master. Moving on, we have the high flying and killing Star-Lord, who does have an ultimate that auto aims, but outside of that, is a pretty hard character to master, but somewhat of an easy character to pick up. If you have relatively good aim and know how to flank and deal some good damage, you're going to get the ultimate that does the work for you, and you should be able to dish out a fair amount of both final hits and damage as Peter Quill. That being said, he is an aim hero, and you can get better and better on the guy. And we've seen that in both pro play at the highest level and ranks at the highest level. But if you do want to learn a hero that has a pretty forgiving kit and somewhat easy to grasp and aim towards newcomers, then look no further than Star-Lord. All right, we move on to Storm, who's going to be short, quick, and sweet. Yes, you do have the ability to go within speed mode and damage mode, and there is some mastering of positioning, which has her towards the harder part to learn within Rivals, but she can be relatively easy to master once you get the hang of her mechanics. Storm is definitely one of those heroes that will take somewhat time to pick up and play and is not completely beginner friendly, but the more you play her, the more you get used to her, and then she becomes a bit more easy to master, so her curve kind of slows down the more you play her. All right, guys, the Punisher. Straight from Call of Duty, this is the most beginner-friendly aiming hero within the game. If you don't play hero shooters, this is one that you're going to want to lean to, as he is the easiest to play at an aiming level. He is equipped with both an AR and a shotgun that you can switch between. He's got a good turret to place at optimal times, and his ultimate can be punishing, but also you can be the Punisher with it. I think he does have a high skill ceiling, which makes him a great character to pick up, play, and last for the long term. Not to mention, he does have some grapple tech with him and some small mechanics that make him great. The Thing is pretty easy by design and simple. You punch and you punch again. I talked to some of the best Thing players in the world, and they all had him about right here on the chart. He's not the hardest to master, because once you get his kit, it's very simple. Learning his kit altogether is also very simple. Yancey Street is probably the hardest thing to master. Once you get a good read on that and dive heroes and peeling for your team and knowing when to go in and out, you've got the firm grasp of his gameplay loop. The God of Thunder is one of the harder vanguards to pick up and learn, just because of the way that his kit's a little wonky, and just getting the charge mechanics down, and his hammers and his throwing around and his bully and his up close and personal play style. But that tapers off pretty quickly. All right, so Venom is a pretty easy gameplay loop to master. You swing in, you do some slow, you deal some damage, and then you swing out and shields out before it's too late. Or even though he's quite easy to pick up and you have a lot of shield and forgiveness, his overall play style can be pretty cool to master. There's a lot of intricate things about Venom and the symbiote that make him great, and that ultimately reward players that decide to master the Vanguard. The Winter Soldier obviously is all about aim, but he also has a lot of forgiveness with the rest of his kit. They gave him another charge to reset his combo. His hook does take some time to learn, and his ultimate is one of the most devastating, but the dude is pretty busted. They gave him a very good kit, and it's not impossible to get effective play out of him, so I've got him in the dead middle of his skill floor, with his skill ceiling being a bit higher. And lastly, guys, we go to Wolverine, who we used to have way harder, but as time has progressed, his whole role in Rivals has become a bit more simple. Now, managing his rage mechanics, his kidnaps, and getting the most out of his kit does take some time, and I think he's probably one of the hardest heroes to learn at a base value. But as you learn him and play him, you're going to get used to the way that all of his stuff works together, and his clear role as that tank shredder becomes a bit more obvious and easy to play. So here it is, guys. This is everything. I'm in the way, so I'll move in just a second. But this is all the heroes, ranking them from easiest to hardest. And what's cool about this is things change. We took a way too long of a break since we did this last time, I think like 3 months. But if you enjoyed this type of video, let me know. We'll do it on a season, I guess half-season basis. And if you haven't already and you enjoyed this content, you enjoying all the content here on the channel, subscribe down below. It helps support me a ton as a creator. We've got a lot of big stuff planned. But anyway, guys, have a good one. Have a great one. I'm going to get out of the way. And until the next one, happy rivaling.